Alright, hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode of Album Roundup, where every month I talk about the albums that I really enjoyed for that month. It's a great way to talk quickly about some of the records that I haven't been able to give total focus on the channel. Basically, my process is to do full-length reviews for the albums that are really important to me, that are by artists that I follow religiously, or albums that just knock me out of the park. But I listen to a ton of music, so there's a lot of other albums that are really good and really enjoyable, but I just don't have the time to do full-on reviews for everything. So I like to package them all in this kind of big recommendation-style episode where I talk about 10-ish records that I've been enjoying for the month that I think are worth recommending to you guys. Give you a little bit of a rundown of what you can expect with them, but try to keep it brief so the episode isn't too massively long. So let's hop into it. There's quite a few records here to talk about. I'll talk a little bit about some of the records that I did a more in-depth review of to turn your attention towards that. But mostly I'm going to talk about some new records that I haven't talked about yet on the channel. So hopefully you enjoy it, and let's dive in. I'm mostly going to be talking about November releases, obviously, but I'm framing the show as a way to talk about just any music that I've been listening to, regardless of when it was released, maybe even older albums, like from back in the 70s or 80s. So just to keep that in mind, I try to stick mostly to the newest releases. But I want to feel freedom to talk about something that's been striking me that maybe from before that, especially earlier in this year, which is this first album called Between Timid and Timbuktu by Stinkbug. I'll put in the description the titles of these records so you can search them out on your platform of choice, streaming service, Bandcamp, your favorite prog rock record store, whatever. But this one came out actually in June, it appears, June 23rd, but I just heard about it just recently, this past week. This is a cool new kind of raw, unpolished prog band, and I believe this is their first full-length record as a group, and it's very eclectic, very interesting, has kind of a punky kind of atmosphere to it in some ways, but also some classic prog in the mix. A bit of a jazzy undertone to some of these tracks as well. You can tell these musicians have a little bit of a jazz, some jazz chops to their playing. I liken it to Moonletters. They released a great record this year as well. I believe they're kind of in the same scene, so to speak. They're kind of from around the same place in the U.S. I believe this band is from the northwest of the U.S. In some manner. The review that led me to this discovery was talking about seeing them at some kind of concert event with various members from that area. So really cool release that I wanted to highlight very quickly if you're interested in something that's a bit more raw sounding, maybe even shades of like jam band type stuff like I've been talking about with Humphreys McGee and Squeaky Feet and that kind of a feel at times, but some really cool proggy moments, some fun tracks here, some great variety, some great playing, and a bit of a punk atmosphere about kind of their aesthetic, and that it's a bit more raw and a bit more emotion driven, and it's really fun. So I wanted to mention that, even though it's not technically a November release, I think it's worthy to add to the list as a recommendation. Alright, I've already talked about this in a longer form review, so I'll only briefly mention it, but on November 7th, Jonas, Lindberg and The Other Side released Time Frames. Excellent classic symphonic prog sound. You know, he's definitely inspired by Spock's Beard, Neil Morse, Transatlantic, Flower Kings, that era of prog, that kind of 90s, revival of prog scene is what Jonas Lindberg really does expertly well. And this album's been growing on me. I absolutely love it. This is right in my wheelhouse, and I think he's one of the shining new stars in the genre. So really exciting record. Definitely a must check out if you're a fan of the bands I've mentioned here. If you love Spock's Beard, if you love Flower Kings, if you love Transatlantic, this is definitely in that family, and some excellent stuff on here. Definitely well worth your time, and will probably be mentioned in my big album tournament at the end of the year. Another album that I gave a longer form review of was Smalltape's Tangram. This is from November 7th as well. Check out my longer form review. This is a underrated artist that I absolutely love. Kind of along a similar line as like a Steven Wilson, very much into the sound production side of things. Very beautifully crafted, but very modern sounding. It has a lot of jazzy undertones to it, but some creative playing and just really well structured. It's just a beautiful piece of music that's been growing on me as well. Another one you might see in that year-end list that I'm talking about and referencing. I wish more people were listening to this. I think it's really excellent. There's so many great standout moments, and it's just a beautiful record. Maybe not traditional prog, so to speak, but has a more artistic nature to it that I think lends itself into this prog scene really well. Similar, like I said, to a Steven Wilson. I kind of view this on a similar level as the Harmony Codex from Steven Wilson. I think it has a similar aesthetic to it, but you know, I just really love it and think he's an excellent artist with excellent vocals, excellent playing, jazzy undertones, like I mentioned, some extended pieces here that really take their time to grow, sometimes more of a cinematic quality to his compositions. So just check it out. It's excellent. Next, I have Astronoid and their album Stargod. This is from also November 7th. And this was brought to my attention by some fellow YouTubers who are into this band more than I am. I was worried this would be a bit more too much on the metal side of things. Sometimes they're billed a little bit on an extreme or post-metal type side of the coin, but really it sounds very accessible, very poppy, 80s synth inspired, with a little bit of metal leaning, a little bit of that post-metal style. But I was hearing shades of like a Coheed and Cambria, honestly, as I was listening to it. And people recommend this for fans of like Vola, Tesseract, bands like that. So I think I'm not too far off from what they're going for. Some blast beats in sections, some major key harmonies, some big soaring vocals, pleasing synth work throughout, definitely 80s flavor, big arena rock style in sections, but they touch upon that little post-metal side as well with some more elongated sections in different moments. But each track is fairly short and compact and catchy and fun. And it's just a bright, shimmering album. It kind of reminds me also of like Voyager. Their previous album has a lot of that big pop synth energy, but with metal framework. And I think this has a similar style. Really great stuff and really fun to listen to, certainly. Also on November 7th, the release of the album by Deposed King, Letters to a Distant Past. This is eclectic prog from Hungary. This is a duo of Daniel Kriffel and Dominique Kierley. They released an album called One Man's Grief in January 2023. And this album continues in the similar vein. I did a short review of that one, I believe, back when it was released. And this is just beautiful music, very atmospheric, very ambient, but it has its moments where it gets a little bit more involved, a little heavier, but mostly just soothing and atmospheric and just beautiful to just sit back and let wash over you. Classical influences, jazz tinges, a little bit of post-rock, so to speak. I really enjoyed this thoroughly. It's just a beautiful record. There's two versions that I've seen, kind of the shorter version of the record, but then there's a deluxe edition that adds quite a bit of music to the album, and it's well worth listening to that as well. All these pieces are beautiful and excellent. Atmospheric prog. I'm reminded of like Lunatic Soul, which I really loved the Lunatic Soul record from this year. It's in that same family, a little bit of a Riverside angle. Great, maybe some of the lighter, like folkier sides of Opeth as well. I just love it. I think Damar has some beautiful jazz-tinged piano, some electronica, fuzzy Floydian guitar soloing. The title track has these beautiful atmospheric textures and these electronica drums. Just a subtle tapestry of beautiful sounds and music. If you like things that are a bit more laid back, a bit more atmospheric and ambient, and that just wash over you. Nothing too heavy, nothing too metallic, and just excellent, beautiful music to let wash over you and enjoy. That's what you can expect from this record. Just really excellent, and I heartily recommend it. I think it's great. Next, another release from November 7th, I wanted to touch on the Mommyheads and their album No Quietus. This is a band that is prog adjacent, maybe not full-blown prog, but a lot of prog fans really like them. More in maybe a power pop or indie rock style, art rock, so to speak. They have a lot of albums to their name. They pump them out pretty quickly. But it's really excellent stuff for fans of like Jellyfish and all of that kind of world. There's definitely some stuff to enjoy. XTC, I hear a little influence from that. So it's poppy melodies, very catchy stuff that grabs your ear and you instantly enjoy. But if you dive deeper, there's some hidden complexities and layers. Really fun stuff, definitely. I really found a lot to enjoy with this record, and it's easily accessible to jump in to and really take your ear and enjoy right off the bat, but then it also keeps bringing you back to kind of uncover new complexities and new layers. I think that's the best kind of music. Adam Elk is kind of the band leader and songwriter. You've got drummer Dan Fisherman here, Jason McNair on bass, and Michael Holt on keys and vocals. A great lineup. It's 10 tracks long. It breezes by pretty quickly. And it's just fun, prog adjacent power pop stuff that prog fans eat up because it has more complexity than just your standard pop rock music that you might hear on a mainstream radio. And I think it's really well worth listening to if you like that style, if you don't mind a little bit of pop hook into your, proggy material. I think this could be for you. Surprisingly, one of my favorite albums of this batch is the Reticent and their album Please. This is from November 13th. I know a lot of people who watch my channel are not huge fans of prog metal necessarily, and this is definitely prog metal and sometimes quite heavy prog metal. But it's just really expertly crafted. It's a beautiful record. It's a concept record dealing with some very serious issues that I think are important and well worth diving into and learning about on this record. It feels like such an important record because of the subject matter. This is basically the project of Chris Hathcock. And he's done these concept records that are very deep and diving into darker themes. He did a concept album called The Obolette, which dealt with a descent into Alzheimer's, which is really quite a dark subject matter to tackle. And this one is all about depression and anxiety and all of those darker mental disorders that people go through. And I think it's personified really expertly well through the music. That's why it's so dark and heavy and complex, and it really gives you a lot of those feelings that he's describing in the lyrics musically, and I think that's really expertly done. There's tracks here that buzz in your brain and give you these kind of anxiety feelings. There's the harshness of the Bed of Wasps, which is just this crazy track that has blast beats and growling vocals and really brings about this kind of panic attack feeling in a musical form that I think is really interestingly crafted. Probably not for everyone, but that's kind of the point of it, I'm not a huge fan of growling vocals, as you know, but when it makes sense in the context of the music, then I can find enjoyment from it, and I understand why they're using them in this record in that way, but they're not too pervasive. A lot of these tracks don't even have growling vocals and are much more clean singing, even some great beautiful harmonies. There's definitely shades of like early Dream Theater here and Opeth that you can hear in the mix, but not a copycat, totally on its own. There's some excellent songs here. Probably one of the weaker spots is that there's a lot of spoken word type stuff. There's several tracks that are just these kind of news clips and people talking about medical information that deals with the subject matter, obviously. But on repeat listens, I mostly am there for the music itself, and to keep hearing these spoken word sections isn't my favorite thing, and it takes up such a large chunk of what's already a fairly short album, so there's really only like 6 tracks, I think, that are just fully music rather than spoken word sections. But each one is fantastic, and there's excellent playing throughout. Chris Hathcock is a musical genius, and it really shines on this record. And like I said, very important subject matter that I think is worthy for anyone to listen to and get an idea of these kinds of disorders from a different perspective. I think it could open your eyes to how difficult dealing with some of this stuff is. I deal with my own versions of it, so I really could relate to this record. And I just really fell for it. I think it's excellent progressive metal, even if it tends on the harsh side at points that are hard on my ears, but I understand the reasoning behind it, which helps me get through it better, because I kind of see the point musically of why they're introducing those harsh sounds. It makes sense to me in the context of the record. So excellent. Hardly recommend. Of course, if you're opposed to metal music, this won't be your kind of thing at all, but if you don't mind prog metal, I think this is a really important listen and well worth your time. Just an excellent record. Next, we have Steve Morse Band and the album Triangulation. This came out on November 14th. Steve Morse is an excellent musician. He's one of my favorites, one of the premium modern guitar players that we've got. Of course, played with Dixie Dregs, very prog-focused band, instrumental with tinges of blues and country and rock and all of these different styles, jazz music certainly. And Steve Morse Band is a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more rock-oriented than Dixie Dregs, but there's still some influences from those different genres included throughout these tracks. So it's a really fun track list, some really cool instrumental tracks here. We've got Steve Morse on acoustic and electric guitars, guitar synth. We've got Dave LaRue on bass and Van Romain on drums, and a couple of guest musicians as well on a few tracks. We've got Eric Johnson on the track Tex US doing vocals and guitar work. Scott Sim on guitar on March of the Nomads. John Petrucci comes and guests on the title track, and Kevin Morse on guitar on Taken by an Angel, the final track. So you get some guest people here. John Petrucci is a cool addition because, he's kind of the modern day guitar hero, and Steve Morse is one of the all-stars of the guitar scene. So it's cool to see them play together. But excellent music, it's really fun, really exciting, high octane, high energy tracks. There's a few ballads, a few more rocking tracks. You get some bluesy moments, some almost country tinged kind of moments as well. Really cool, complex, fast playing. It would have been nice to get a little bit more variety. Maybe that's why I prefer Dixie Dregs material, because, just hearing guitar focused music is sometimes fatiguing to me as a listener, and would have liked a variety with some, violin or some keyboards and things like that. But that's not really what this is about. And it sounds excellent. So if you like Steve Morse and what he does, this is a no-brainer. Knocks it out of the park with a great instrumental rock album that I really enjoyed and thought was excellent. Here's an album that surprised me that I absolutely adore. This is a Valerian Tea by Magic Fig. This came out November 21st. Another U.S. band. A lot of the bands in the list today are from the U.S. Band from their San Francisco-based psych pop prog band. More in the indie scene than the classic prog scene that I tend to follow. But I think it adds a cool freshness and a vibrancy that makes this all the more exciting. It's a fairly short record. They came out with an EP, I believe, last year. So this is their first full-length record. Still fairly short, still under 40 minutes. So it's not like this is much longer than EP length anyways, but every track is fun. There's great female vocals. It definitely has that 60s psych flavor, some Canterbury elements, almost some Jellyfish style power pop influences. Love the jazz inflected guitars, bright synths, just so much joy on this record, a kaleidoscope of sounds, some dreamy atmospheres, some great bass grooves. I just thought it was a joy to listen to this. It feels like a throwback at the same time as feeling very modern and fresh too, because it's a group of younger musicians really taking this classic music to heart and bringing it into a new era. And I was just really taken with the record. I think it's fantastic. I love the bright kind of poppier sound to it, but with, classic vintage 70s and 60s instrumentation, some really cool vintage keys being played on here. And it was quite a fun listen. It's breezy. It goes through fast. There's several short interstitial interlude type tracks throughout the record that kind of ties everything together in a cool, fascinating way. And I can't recommend this enough. If you like kind of indie pop mixed with some psych progs elements, I think this could be a home run. It's a really fun album with great female vocals and one that really caught me by surprise, and I enjoyed a lot more than I expected. I also talked this month about Spock's Beard, the Archaeoptimist. I did a long form review. This is probably my favorite band of all time, so I'm biased, obviously, and I think this is an excellent record, one of their best post-Neil Morse albums. I just ate this up and love every minute of it. If you want to know what modern prog is all about, this is the record to listen to. Just everything done at a high quality, great production value, bringing in that classic Spock's Beard sound, but still keeping modern elements to the band. I just can't speak highly enough about this record. It's a perfect prog album, and I'm excited to see where it lands in my year-end list. It's really fun to listen to this one. Next, an album I didn't know was coming out. This is the Tea Club and their album Chasm, which came out November 24th, crossover prog from the US once again. And they came out with one of my favorite records of the past 10 years or so, with If When from 2019. They're a really interesting group and almost hard to explain what they sound like, but I find some like folk elements, some poppier elements, but also complexity and, interesting, intricate arrangements. They bring in a little bit of elements of post-rock and alternative rock and space rock. Definitely play with some of the styles from the 60s and 70s, but bring it into a modern sound. There's some really great dual vocals from Patrick and Dan McGowan. And just expertly crafted music, really fun and exciting and vibrant. Kind of brings to mind like Echolin, perhaps, like kind of a vibrant modern sound with eclectic nature and different complexities, some high octane moments on this record. I will admit that this record in particular, Chasm, is taking its time to develop. It's really a difficult listen at first. It really didn't grab me when I was first listening to it, but it's one that's kind of a grower that develops over time as you listen more. So I'm starting to open up to it. I was initially a bit disappointed in the record, but I think there's some hidden depths and hidden layers. Some people have even compared them to like the Deer Hunter and their style. These are shorter tracks. Some of their past records, they've had really lengthy, like epics, but this one focuses more on shorter tracks, each having kind of a punch to them and interesting, intricate arrangements. Definitely worth checking out if you're into like eclectic modern prog. I think there's some interesting things on this record, but like I said, it's very layered, very complex, very, hard to decipher at times. There's some lighter moments here and there throughout to kind of break up the intensity that can come at other times, but it sounds like the band had quite a time kind of getting this record together. And they're very proud of it, and a lot of people that I've seen their opinions of it are saying that it's a grower. So I'm still in that kind of growing phase, but I definitely want to recommend it because it's a band that I really have fallen for in the past and trust them to come out with really excellent material. And so I think this is worth checking out and listening to. This is Chasm by the Tea Club. And finally, I've already talked about it at length. I've gushed about it excessively. This is the new Moron Police record, Pachenko. Check out my long-form review to check out my thoughts. To me, this is kind of the last big release of the year. November 28th is when this came out. And lived up to all the hype and all the expectations. A wonderful return to form from the band. Just pop prog to the extreme. So many cool moments and layers. Expert finale, a big suite that's like a prog masterpiece. I really love it. I think this is well worth your time and attention. I think everyone should try out this record. It may not be for everyone. There's a lot going on here, a lot of, poppier sounds and different influences and kind of chaotic music at times, but I think it's really excellent and has been super fun this year to get into. Can't recommend it enough, and it's going to be a big player in my year-end list, certainly. All right, I think that's where we'll end the show today. Thank you guys for joining me. A smattering of new records that I think are worth your attention. Some interesting things there. A few things off the beaten path, perhaps, but if you have an open mind, I think you might like some of this music. So there's kind of something for everyone. There's a good variety in the mix here today. And this, like I said, this is probably the last album roundup I'll do this year, because there tends to not be a lot of big releases in the month of December. So I'll probably come back either at the end of January or maybe even the end of February, depending. Sometimes January can be a little light on releases as well. But I love doing this monthly series, and I plan for it to be a staple on the channel into next year, because it's a great way for me to talk quickly about some albums I'm really enjoying without having to spend the time on a full-length review, which won't get many views anyways. I think this is just a better format and a better way to talk about some great underrated music. So thank you guys for joining me on this episode. Hopefully you found something to enjoy, something to take away from here. And I'll hopefully catch you guys in the next episode. Bye everybody. Enjoy the music.